Hi there, this is Caitlin Porter from the Mongoose Enablement Team. Welcome to part 8 of the Mongoose Hello World training series. In this final video, we'll continue building out our Zero Training Customer Portal. We'll also get you introduced to tile forms and dynamic actions within Mongoose. Let's pick up where we left off with our Customer Portal form. In the previous video, we added our items grid, but instead of making this a standard grid, I want to make it more visual by displaying a picture of the item alongside it. In order to do this, I want to utilize a tile form. Tile forms are essentially embeddable forms with limited capabilities, and they must be displayed within a container, such as our grid. The information on each tile is taken from a single record of the IDO collection that's bound to that grid. These are a great tool for displaying key information succinctly. Let's close our Customer Portal form and click the New Form Definition icon from the toolbar. For the category, select Classic, and for the wizard, select Tile. Select OK, and let's name our form Items Tile. Set the data source to our Items IDO. Then hit Next. Let's remove all of the selected properties except for our picture property. Then hit Next. Hit Next again, and then hit Finish to create your tile form. Let's get started by resizing the form. Navigate to the Layout section in the Properties panel, and set the width to 40 and the height to 4. Click on the Picture Static component and delete it. Select the Picture Edit component and change the type to Static, then rename it to Static Picture. Scroll down to the Formatting section and set the Image and Text property to Image Only. Then scroll down to the Miscellaneous section and set No colon equal to True. Resize the component and shape it into a square. Then move it to the left of the tile form. Grab another static component from the toolbox and drop it in the top right section of the form. Rename the component to Static Item and set the theme class to Header. Set the justification to Left, and under Binding Type, set it to Property. Click on the binding drop list and select Item. Set the width to 27 and the height to 1.5. Then set No colon equal to True. Grab another static component from the toolbox and draw it underneath our item static. Rename it to Static Item Description. Set the justification to Left. For the binding type, set it to Property and select the Description property. Under the Layout section, set the width to 20 and the height to 1.5. Then set No colon equal to True. Grab one more static component from the toolbox and draw it to the right of our item description. Rename it to Static Cost. Set the justification to Right. Set the binding type to Property. Select our Cost property under the binding field. In the Layout section, set the width to 8 and the height to 1.5. Then set No colon equal to True. Rearrange the components on the form till you find something that you like. Then save the form, close it, and unload all the global form objects. Now let's apply our tile form to the grid on our Customer Portal form. Open our Customer Portal form and select the Grid Items component. Scroll down to the Miscellaneous section of the Properties panel and set the Tile Form property to our new form, Items Tile. Then directly below that, set the Tile When attribute to Always. Now, in order to see the items in our grid, we need to refresh the items collection. Expand the Details pane at the bottom and navigate to the Event Handlers tab. And let's add a new event. Hit the new icon on the bottom left. Name our event Sign In BTN. Set the type to Collection Refresh, and then click the ellipsis on the Parameters field. For the collection drop list, select our secondary collection, then hit OK. We want this event to fire when the user signs in with their customer ID. Select the button Sign In To component and navigate to the Events section. Set the primary event here to our Sign In BTN event. Now we're ready to test this out. Let's save our form and reopen it in the Runtime Mode tab. Test this out by entering a customer ID of 1 and then hit the Sign In button. You'll see once you hit the Sign In button, the collection will refresh and we'll see a list of items in the grid using our new Items Tile form. Next, let's add our Count field and Cart button so users can add items to their cart. Grab a static component from the toolbox and drop it into the Count region of Flex Layout Buttons. Then grab an Edit component from the toolbox and drop it into the same region. Next, grab a Button component from the toolbox and drop it into the Cart region of Flex Layout Buttons. Reselect the first static, and let's rename it to Static Count. Give it a caption of S-Count, and create the string if it hasn't yet been created. Then select the Edit component and rename it to Edit Count. Set the justification to left, and let's bind it to our count variable. For the binding type, set it to variable, and click the ellipsis for the binding. Specify count as the variable name, and then hit OK. Set the width of this field to 7 and the height to 1.5. Then select the Button component and rename it to Button Add to Cart. Give it a caption of S Add to Cart and create the string value. Assign it a theme class of blue button, and let's also assign it a bitmap file so it displays the text and an image. For the bitmap file, select shoppingcart.png. Set the image and text attribute to horizontal image text. This will lay out the image and then the text horizontally on the button. Then set the size to 20 wide and the height to 1.5. Let's pause here and regenerate our form so we can see our changes. With the home page region finished, let's start moving on to the cart page. We'll build out a cart page where users can view and save their orders. Grab a static component from the toolbox and drop it into the cart page region of Flex Layout Main. Let's rename it to Static Cart. Give it a caption of S-Cart. Assign the header theme class. Set the justification to center. And then set the width to 20 and the height to 1.5. Next, let's grab a grid component from the toolbox. Place it into the same region. Rename this to Grid Orders. And let's set the binding type on this to Primary Collection. And leave the default of objects in the binding field. Set the width to 35 and the height to 15. Now let's grab a button component from the toolbox and place it in the same region. Rename it to Button Checkout and give it a caption of S-Checkout. Create the string if it hasn't yet been created. Let's assign it a theme class of blue button. Then set the width to 20 and the height to 1.5. Now, since the alignment of this region is set to stretch, I don't want the button to stretch too wide across the screen, so I'm going to set a margin on the component itself. Click on the Edit Flex Attributes button and set the margin to 10, 0, 10, 0. This will set 10 character units to the left and right of the button. Hit OK. And now, since we just bound our grid, we need to regenerate the form so we can bind some grid columns. Hit the Regenerate Form button from the toolbar, and when the form opens back up, click on our Grid Orders component, and then hit the Edit Grid Columns button in the top left corner. Add 2 more grid columns using the icon below. Reselect the first grid column and rename it to Grid Call Ord Num. Set the binding type to Property and bind it to our order number property. Select the second grid column and rename it to Grid Call Item. Set the binding type to Property and bind it to our item property. Select the third grid column and rename it to Grid Call Count. Set the binding type to Property and let's bind it to our count property. Select the last column and rename it Grid Call Cust ID. Set the binding type to Property and bind it to our customer ID property. Select OK and then reselect our grid orders. We want to set this to read only. So expand the behavior section and set read only disable to true. Go ahead and regenerate your form here, and let's move on to creating the navigation. We want to add in functionality to our buttons that allow the user to click between the pages. To achieve this, we're going to use the Enable When attribute from the Properties panel. This will allow us to create a conditional expression that will evaluate automatically anytime the value in that expression changes. We're going to use a variable to achieve this. We want to start by creating our variable when the form opens and setting it to the sign-in page. Expand the Details pane and select the Event Handlers tab. Hit New on the bottom, and let's use one of the standard Mongoose events, Standard Form Pre-Display. Change the type to Set Values. Then click the ellipsis next to the Parameters field. Click the ellipsis next to the Variables field, and then hit New. Let's name our variable Page and give it a value of 1. Then hit OK until you get back to the home screen. Now we want to set some visible when conditions on each of our pages. Select the Flex Layout main component, then hit the Edit Flex Layout Attributes button. Click the Sign-In Page region and scroll down to the Behaviors section. Hit the ellipsis on the Visible When field. Here's where we can build our conditional statement. Select the New button and set the value type to Variable Value. Then give it a value of Page. Then hit OK. We want Page to be equal to, and then hit the Edit Value for the right value. Value type to be literal, and the value to be 1. Then hit OK. We just built a conditional statement that will only make this region visible when the variable Page is equal to 1. Just below that, set Visible in Design Mode to True. Next, grab our Visible When statement and copy it. Then select our Home Page region, and then paste in our statement into the Visible When attribute here. Change the value from 1 to 2. That way this region only displays when the variable value is equal to 2. Set Visible in Design Mode equal to True. Next, select the Cart Page region and paste it there as well. Here, change the value to 3 and set Visible in Design Mode to True. Select OK. And next, let's create some events on our buttons that will set our page variable value. Let's add a new event from the Details pane. Hit the new icon at the bottom. And let's name this event Sign-In BTN 2. Hit OK and change the type to Set Values. Then hit the ellipsis on the Parameters field. Hit the ellipsis next to the Variables field and then hit New. Set the target equal to Page and the value equal to 1. Then hit OK until you return back to the home screen. Expand the Sign-In button to Event and select the event handler we just created. Hit the Copy button at the bottom and then rename this event to Home BTN. Under the Parameters field, change the value of 1 to 2. Then hit the Copy button again, and let's rename this event to Cart BTN. Under the Parameters field, change the variable value from 2 to 3. Now that we have our events created, let's attach them to the buttons. Collapse the Details pane and select our Sign-In button on the left. Scroll down to the Events section on the Properties panel, and let's set the primary event on this button to Sign-In BTN 2. Then select the Home button and assign the primary event here to Home BTN. Lastly, select the Cart button and set the primary event to Cart BTN. Now, we also want to set the page variable after a user logs in with their customer ID. So let's set this on the Sign-In button here. Click the button Sign-In To component, and then click the ellipsis on the primary event that's defined on the component. Here, let's add an event. Hit OK. Let's set the type to Set Values. Click the ellipsis for the Parameters field, and then click the Variables ellipsis. Hit New. Set the target to our page variable, and set the value to 2 so it shows our home page region. Hit OK until you return back to the home screen. Let's also set an initial value on the count variable so it'll default to 1. Click on the Edit Count component and click the ellipsis on the binding attribute. Set the initial value on that variable to 1, then hit OK. We also want to set some dynamic actions on the menu buttons that only enable them when the customer is signed in with their customer ID. We can use the customer ID variable to achieve this. Click on the Sign In button from the menu, and under the Behavior section, click on the ellipsis to the right of the Enabled When attribute. Here is where we can build our Enabled When condition. Hit the Edit Value button for the left value field. Set the value type to variable value, and set the value to customer ID. Then hit OK. Change the operator to less than or greater than, and then hit the Edit Value for the right value. Change the value type to literal and leave the value blank. Then hit OK. This condition is saying that only enable this component when customer ID is not equal to null. Hit OK until you get back to the home screen, and then repeat this same process with the home and cart buttons from the menu, using the same condition statement. Once you're done, save your form and let's reopen it in the Runtime Mode tab. Notice now when you open the form that all of the menu buttons are disabled because no customer has logged in. Let's go ahead and log in with our customer ID of 1 and then click the Sign In button. Remember, the Sign In button is refreshing the collection and setting the page variable to 2. And because we have a customer ID variable populated, all of our menu buttons are now enabled. You can see our customer ID variable in the top right corner. Next, we want to add in functionality to allow the user to drag an item from the grid onto the cart button in order to add it to their cart. In order to do that, we first need to create some events. Hop back over into the Design Mode tab, and let's add a new event. Name this event Set New Cart Entry. Set the event type to Set Values, and then select the parameters ellipsis. We want to set the values for the properties on the primary collection. To do this, select the ellipsis on the Properties field. Then select New. For the target value, let's select our item property from the primary collection. We want to substitute this with the item value from our secondary collection. Click the ellipsis on the Value field. For the type, select Property Value. Then select our secondary collection. For the value, select our item property. Then hit OK until you get back to the Edit Set Property Values modal. This is saying, set our item property on the primary collection to our item property on the secondary collection. When you see that it's prefixed with a 2, that means it's coming from the secondary collection. Next, let's set the count property to our variable count. Hit the New button. Set the target to our count property and leave the primary collection as the collection for target. Type in capital V, open paren, count, close paren. This will substitute our count property with the count variable. Hit OK, and let's add one more. Hit the New button, and this time, let's set our customer ID equal to our variable customer ID. Select customer ID for the target, type in V, open paren, customer ID, close paren for the value. Then hit OK. Hit OK until you get back to the home screen, and let's add another event. Hit the New icon in the bottom left, and let's name this event Add to Cart. Hit OK, and then change the event type to Collection Make Current. Then click the ellipsis for the parameters field. Let's set the collection to our primary collection. Hit OK, and let's add another event handler to our Add to Cart event. Hit the New icon. Select our Add to Cart event, then hit OK. Change the event handler type to Collection New. Then hit the ellipsis for the parameters field and select our primary collection. Hit OK, and let's add one more event handler to our Add to Cart event. Click the New icon. Select our Add to Cart event and change the event type to Generate Event. Click the ellipsis for the parameters field. And select our event Set New Cart Entry. Check the box that says Post Event Asynchronously. This means that this event will only fire if the first events fire successfully. Hit OK to return to the home screen. So what did we just build? We started by creating an event that would set the focus onto the primary collection. Following that, we did a collection new, which would insert a new row into the primary collection. Then we generated our set new cart entry event, which sets all the property values from the secondary collection to the primary collection. Anytime you add a new item to the cart, it'll run this event and add a new row each time. Now that we have our events created, let's add them to the components on our form. Select our grid items and expand the events section. Select the ellipsis on the drag from events property and select our add to cart event. Then hit the add button and then hit OK. Now select the add to cart button and click the ellipsis on the drop on events property. Select our add to cart event here as well and then hit the add button. Then hit OK. In order to have a successful drag and drop event, there must be one matching event name shared between the two components. In this case, it's our add to cart event that is linking them. Lastly, we need a way to save our order. Click on the checkout button and let's set the primary event to a standard Mongoose event of standard form save. Now we're ready to test it. Save your form and let's reopen it in the Runtime Mode tab. Sign in with our customer ID of 1 and let's grab an item and drag it to our cart. Then to view your cart, hit the cart button, and now you can see that our bike was added with a count of 1. We can save our order to the database by hitting the checkout button, which is running our standard form save event. And because we built this as a flex form, you can see if you shrink the browser that the form will automatically adjust to the viewing size. There's a lot of concepts that we didn't have a chance to dive deep into with this series, and there's much more you can learn. These concepts include adding code into the IDEO layer via .NET IDEO extension classes. Other components like browsers, subforms, user components, barcodes, data views, and KPIs are available, providing in-place business intelligence. You can create key performance indicator graphical displays that can be added to any form. Multiple collections, like parent-child, that we call subcollections. These are useful for order headers and order lines, for example. Parent-child forms, which allow you to extend off a form for modifications without affecting the parent form. Changes to the parent form automatically cascade to the child forms. This is a great tool for creating application-specific templates that can be used across numerous forms with a single point of maintenance. The application event system, which is a major subsystem for adding server-side logic without writing code, allowing you to set rules for automation, workflow, and integration, leveraging IDOs in a wide range of options. Mongoose also integrates with Ion, Ion API, Data Lake, and IDM. Reports in Mongoose can easily be generated using its built-in report writer. Responsive breakpoints allow you to design for different devices when used in conjunction with flex forms, allowing you to create your core logic once as the form adapts to different devices. Mongoose has security where you can set policies at the security role or user level for forms and IDOs. Policies can also be set at the field and row levels. Well, that wraps up the Hello World series. Your next step is to check out the Mongoose Fundamental series. Additional training and documentation can be found on the Mongoose portal at mongoose.infor.com. Thanks for watching.